Wintertime here in PA means the end of driving and the start of storage season. And if that's the case for you, I have some tips today on how to safely store your Nova for the winter. Hi Nova fans, my name is Scott and I'm going to talk to you today about winter storage. Now my Nova hasn't been a daily driver for many years, but I still drive it year-round weather permitting, even during the cold winters here in PA. Unless you're one of the fortunate people who live where it's warm all year round, you probably store your Nova too, whether it be for winter hibernation or just to start a big winter project to get ready for next year. Now this means long periods of time where your vehicle is not being used. Winter storage is usually done to protect the vehicle, but a lot of times that storage can do damage to your car if you don't take the proper steps now. If you just drive your Nova into the garage and lock the door behind you, you may have an unpleasant surprise months later when you open that door. Rust can attack unfinished metal like brake rotors and drums. Condensation can build up in empty gas tanks and brake lines, rusting them out from the inside. Gas can turn into goo, clogging your fuel lines, your filters, your carburetors. And tires can dry rot and get flat spots from sitting too long. And rodents can even attack the interior, looking for places to live. So here are some things you can do to prevent those things from happening to your Nova. A little time now and a little bit more in the spring, it'll give you more time enjoying your car instead of repairing damage from over the winter. The first thing you want to do is to choose a safe place or a dry building to house your car during the winter. A home garage will work real fine. If you don't have a garage, look for a storage facility unit that has a concrete floor, not bare ground like an old barn. This does not need to be a climate-controlled location, but it should not have excess moisture in it. And if you feel dampness in there, it's probably a bad place to store your car. Now, if the only location you have does not have a concrete floor, what you can consider doing is putting down a plastic tarp or a plastic sheet on the ground where you're going to be parked and drive on top of that. That will act as a moisture barrier for the underside of your car. The next thing you want to do is check your oil. If it's dirty or close to the mileage limit, then consider changing your oil before you park the car for the winter. But if it's not too dirty or not too old, then you can wait until the spring and change it then. See, age and mileage is the most important factor to changing oil. And modern oils, especially synthetic oils, are stable for at least a year in your engine. So if the oil's good, let it stay. If it's dirty, change it before you store. All right, next, before you store your Nova for the winter, wash and fully detail it completely to ensure there's no contaminants left anywhere on the vehicle for the duration of the storage period. It seems like an obvious thing, but some people do forget this. Okay, so after you're done washing, take your Nova for one last long drive before you put the car away. And I suggest driving to a gas station, because what you're going to do first is blow out all that water that's gathered up in the rocker panels and all those little nooks and crannies that hold water when you wash the car. And when you get to the gas station, fill the gas tank up all the way. You don't want to have an empty gas tank so condensation can build up inside it. And when you fill it up, make sure you put in a fuel stabilizer like Sta-Bil. Sta-Bil will prevent your fuel from breaking down and turning into goo while the car sits. So let your car run for a few minutes, on the drive home. Let that Sta-Bil mix with the fuel and also work its way through the entire fuel system. And if you have a carburetors, up to the carb bowls and fill those bowls up as well. Then check all the other fluids like antifreeze, power steering fluid. Make sure they're all topped off as well. Okay, so now you're back from the gas station. You've taken a nice long drive. The car is completely dry. What you want to do is make sure your tires are inflated all the way up to their maximum PSI rated on the tire. Okay, this will prevent the tires from developing flat spots when it sits in the garage. It's not necessary to remove modern radial tires because they will keep their shape pretty well, but it's also not advised to put your car up on blocks like everyone used to say, oh, put the car up on blocks while you store it. That's actually not a good idea to leave the suspension hanging from the body. It's not good for the suspension components at all. Now, some people like to remove the battery from the car, but I personally like to use a quality battery tender instead. I leave the battery in the car and hook up a battery tender. Now, this is not a trickle charger which constantly charges the battery. It's a computerized controller that senses battery life and only charges the battery when it's needed. I keep the tender hooked up to the battery the entire time it's stored, and I leave the hood unlatched with the wires running out to plug it into the wall. Now this next one may only be an issue if you live out in the woods somewhere. If you live in a more urban area like I do, I don't really have a whole lot of mouse and rodent problems. But if you live where you do, they like to find their way inside your car and make it their home during the winter. All right, they love to eat wiring. They'll eat the stuffing outside of your seats, tear up your carpets. All right, so what you can do to keep them out of at least the engine is to wad up steel wool and shove it in the air inlets if you have a single air inlet, not an open air cleaner, and put them in your tailpipes as well. That'll prevent them from getting in the exhaust. Now, people have always suggested mothballs, and while they are great for keeping rodents away, they can make the car smell real bad. So instead of using mothballs inside the car, use fabric sheets that you use in your dryer. That will keep those rodents away. Put it inside the car, maybe on the floorboards on each side, in the trunk, keep them out. But mothballs are also a great way outside the car, so it won't make the car stink. So you just basically make a perimeter around the car with little mothballs, and that should keep them away from your car. Now here's a tip I learned the hard way. Leave your car in neutral if you have a manual transmission, and do not put on the parking brake. Now, if you have an automatic, just leave it in park. Obviously, that'll be easy. But place blocks on either side of the tires to prevent the car from rolling. And obviously, park the car on a level surface. Now, how was I affected by this? Well, I used to have aluminum drums on the rear of my car. They came from a late 80s G-body, and they are much later than the steel drums. But because I kept the parking brake on all winter long, it stretched them and it made them oblong. So the next time I took the car out in the spring, the drums would rub and then let go and rub and let go because they weren't circular anymore. They kind of egg-shaped and ruined a set of good aluminum drums. So don't make the same mistake I do. Leave the parking brake off, leave the car in neutral, and block the tires with chocks or wood blocks, whatever you have. All right, this next tip is small, but a lot of people forget it. Roll your windows up, but leave them cracked about an inch. What this will do is allow air to circulate from the garage into the car, and it'll prevent moisture and mold from building inside the cabin. Next, use a high-quality cover that fits tightly and allows air to breathe. This way, it'll protect the car from dust, dirt, or anything else that could fall in the car. And again, one that breathes is important because then when you have the windows cracked a little bit, it'll allow air through the cover into the car to keep the moisture and mold at bay. I said earlier how I like to drive my car in the winter, if the weather allows. I usually get that here in PA, but many places you won't have that luxury. If you are one of those people, let your car sit. Do not try starting it and letting it run for a few minutes and then shutting it off. Unless you can actually drive the car and get it properly warmed up and allow the condensation to completely burn off, it's better to just let the car sit the entire winter. All right, the last thing I want to bring up is safety. And by safety, I mean your safety, not your Nova's safety. Some people, wintertime is more about working on your car than it is about storing your car. Maybe you've got an engine build or a transmission swap or disc brake install, new paint. Whatever the major construction is you're going to be doing, please remember to keep it safe. You need to keep your work area clean, be careful while welding to prevent fires. Also, keep the area well ventilated to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. Now this one comes close to heart because there's a guy I knew back in the 90s who unfortunately lost his life working on the car and died from carbon monoxide poisoning. You know, exhaust fumes from the car, but also, exhaust fumes from space heaters can kill you before you're even aware of it. Please, please, please be careful. Keep the area well ventilated. Keep fire extinguishers around, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors. They will all save your life. Keep them close and keep the batteries in them fresh. Okay, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a few things about winter storage. If you did, please click the like button and be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can leave me comments down below or email me at scott@novaresource.org if you have any ideas for future videos you'd like me to make, or if you just have questions you need answered. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at NovaResource. I post pictures of Novas there every day, and if you would like your Nova featured, please send me high-quality pics and a short description to scott@novaresource.org. Take care and happy motoring.